Right. Hello, guys. Thank you very much for joining the session today. So let me share my screen and I think we can go from there. Anisha, are you guys able to view my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Right. So on behalf of ManageEngine family, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to all our customers, partners, and users, and also the viewers who have currently joined our session for today. A very, very warm welcome from ManageEngine. And I'm Santhosh Narasimhamoorthy, and I'm going to talk about how to embrace the top 10 CIS security control, what it means to today's threat landscape, and how to maintain a very famous term called resilience that we are using in the current threat landscape, right? So I'm going to have a very, very simple agenda. I'm going to talk about the current threat landscape and what are the different prophecies that we have for cybersecurity 2022. What are the different things that's going to be there? What are our threats and how we are going to see the change in game when it comes to cyber criminals or the change in the way that they're going to operate? What's there for cybersecurity 2022? And preparing for that, you need to have a great strategy for when it comes to endpoint security. And we're going to talk about the different strategies. And when I say strategies, it's also about implementing those strategies in reality. So I'm going to say how the top 10 security controls, critical security controls, will help you in order to implement a sound or a good endpoint security. So how you can make simple things to make sure you combat the upcoming war that's through ransomware attacks that's going to come up. Right. To begin with, I've taken a couple of polls from I've taken a couple of from, so you can see the link that is shown on the bottom of the screen. So there are two things in this chart, the chart 1 and chart 2. One talks about what's the biggest threat to your organization from a threat perspective, and the other one is the impact perspective. What was the most significant impact that you had because of these attacks that's here? So people talk about, okay, I've been attacked, I have an impact, and what's the impact level and what's the biggest threat I see for the organization. So when people are asked about what's the biggest threat that you see as an organization, 35% obvious says it's going to be a malware or a ransomware. That probably is a Trojan or an exploit that's going to be there. 24% thinks that it could be a human error, and 20% think it could be an insider threat. That's a good amount. I mean, considering I was just going through one of the forums, and the famous the head of threat analysis, Toby Lewis, says the great resignation that's happening, right? It's going to have more insider attack. That's going to bring in more insider attack. You know, the great resignation everywhere, people moving between the organization. That's going to increase the insider attacks as well. That's one of the prophecies that's coming up. And of course, zero-day exploits, that 11% would be responsible for there, and misuse of legitimate applications, right? We have seen this a lot. So 6% says it is. And fileless memory attacks, that's what people think would be lesser than that. And coming to the other side, what was the impact? Threat, and because of the threat, what's the impact? People say 50, almost 50%. I'll say 48, but then it's 50% end user productivity down. Think about it. 50% of your productivity is down because of an attack that's happening. System downtime contributes to 38%. Loss of productivity. Of course, brand reputation damage is also there. Threat or theft of information assets there. And finally, it's also the revenue. 27% of the percent of time, the revenue is down. So if I have to correlate the chart 1 and 2, I see that there is a greater impact from the malware perspective, and 35% says there. And what is the end result of that from the threat to the impact? You see user productivity down. You can just join the dot. And finally, it also comes down to business revenue impact, right? Previously, it was more of an information theft or a hijacking or things like that. But Right now, it's more focused on bringing the revenue down, or it's not about just paying the ransomware. It's about bringing the whole business down. That's what happened on the Colonial Pipeline attack that happened recently. And you have so many examples that we saw last year and the last two previous year. We have seen so many examples where these ransomware were focused on bringing the business down, not just getting a ransom from the organization. It has done in at every level. So based on what's happening around, let's see what are the different prophecies that we have towards cybersecurity. What you need to be careful about, what you need to be think about, what should your strategy be about. The first one is there will be more focus from the cybersecurity side on tactics and techniques that these cyber criminals were designed to circumvent the signature-based defenses. All or signature-based defenses, they will try to use these tactics and techniques, different tactics. When I say, the tactics and techniques, it includes, fileless malware. I'm sure you guys would have heard about this living off the land techniques that's happening, LOL, right? And executing malicious actions by, leveraging the administrative tools and whatever is inside your organization. I'm going to talk more about that when we go down, but that's one of the biggest threat that's going to be there, using living off the land, LOL. Keep that in mind. And how they're going to design a fileless malware that's going to get executed. That's number one. And number two, leveraging the other biggest threat would be leveraging the vulnerabilities that's part of the vendor, right? That's going to be another, not just next ransomware attacks. They're going to use the vulnerabilities that's part of the vendor. We know what happened on the SolarWinds. We know that there were a lot of other vendors as well who were exploited, and they used these vendors to get into the organizations, do the lateral movement. And the problem is that the identification of to identify that there is a malware inside the organization took very long time. In fact, these threat actors employ different techniques in order to execute these supply chain attacks. I would put it like that. And some of the techniques that includes, hijacking of the updates, or probably undermining the code signing of that specific application, or they could compromise an open source code that's available as part of their vendor as well. Now, these three type of techniques will be used in order to leverage software vendors and get into the organization. So the first one would be the tactics and techniques that would be designed to circumvent any traditional signature-based defenses, something like living off the land or fileless malware. Second thing is using the vendors' vulnerabilities and getting into the organization. The third one will be manipulating the web and mobile APIs that's available, right? That's one of the things. We know there have been a large evolution in terms of mobile usage, device technology, and people relying on mobile device technologies. And of course, the upcoming 5G technology, the quality, the bandwidth that's available for the internet. So mobile phones will be more of an internet gadget, and the people will be using it for, of course, it's already there for corporate and personal devices. But due to this very high percentage of business websites that's going to use the APIs on the websites, think about banking, think about ticketing tool, air ticketing, and things like that. So they're going to mostly rely on these APIs, web-based databases, accessing the forms from the mobiles. Now they're going to use these, and they're going to extract data out of there, and they can hijack these data. They're going to implement more towards that, manipulating web and mobile APIs. That's going to be one other thing. And the fourth one would be malware below the OS level, right? You can see more of that's going to come up, where the traditional way of probably introducing a malware may not be there, but we'll soon see that there will be a steady malwares even below the operating system, something like a rootkit or a bootkit, that could be targeting the problems that are there at the firmware level, right? They're going to target those firmware and the vulnerabilities that's part of there, and there will be malwares that's going to evolve around that. And you could also see that the anti-malware defense systems that we have would also be focusing on the firmware level, right? You would see that coming up in the industry soon, where the modern malware systems should be capable of going into below the OS level and at the firmware level, implanting itself to identify apt toolkits there. So, and then finally, the fifth one, of course, the list does not stop here, but these are the top 5 pressing things that you could see on a 2022 is the more usage of blockchain technology for cyber criminals. Meaning, I mean, they as new technology emerges, they will also be adapting to it. But blockchain a little untraceable of where their presence are. So they're going to use the blockchain technology in order to do the lateral movement or going inside the organization. So the presence will be unnoticed, or it will be very difficult to find out the source of how they came in and can go out. So blockchain would be a new common tool that the cyber criminals would be using up. So if you are focusing on these 5 things, and if you are able to design, strategize, then I think you will be on a better edge in order to combat cyber criminals on 2022 grounds. So focus, I mean, the tactics and techniques, the new adaptation that they have. I want to quote a couple of examples, probably one example, and then I will go into the CIS security. One of the examples this you would have seen everywhere, but even it's apt for the current threat landscape as well. How did the evolution of ransomware came in? This is one of such models. You have Mitra attacks. They have a lot of models that's been proposed, but I particularly took the Microsoft Hora based model, what it talks about, and that actually substantiates what I told you about tactics and techniques. The evolution of ransomware is going towards in that direction. What do I mean by that? Previously, a ransomware comes into your organization, or probably inside a ecosystem that executes the commands there and gathers the information, either encrypts there, leave it, or probably take it out. And that's just a set of command that's been sent into the system, in a layman's term. But moving further, we have human operated ransomware. At every level, it's been designed from the outside. It will be at several stages. Stage by stage, they go into the system, they do an entry point, they do a lateral movement, they go ahead and exfiltrate your data. And I mean, at every level, it's been operated from outside, designed for a specific purpose. Now, you could correlate to what I was saying about the business down. That's what exactly happened on a Colonial Pipeline. They were targeted, designed, and crafted to bring those business down. They don't have a common agenda. They have a specific agenda. That's how it's really moving into. So you can see that this model tells you how it enters into the environment, and probably the examples would be something like an email or a browser, or you could say the attack on the data centers. So even with a login with a legitimate credentials, they use these legitimate credentials to go into the data centers and enter the environment there. And once they enter, they do not execute their purpose there. Rather, they wait and transfers. They spread in terms of they do a transfer spread, and then they go into executing their objectives. And exactly this is what happened on. A classic example is Revil or Revil, however you want to call it. This is exactly what has happened. And in fact, I'm not going to go into much details here. I've given you a timeline of how they infiltrated, how they took RDB sessions, and how they used system credentials, RDB sessions in order to exfiltrate this data and upload it to the cloud. In fact, now, Revil is a one example that shows that they made several attempts to evade the traditional signature-based tools, and they were using living off the land techniques. Revil used it, and that's why it was very difficult. It was very difficult to get this REvil ransomware attack. And this is one of a kind. This is an example. If you want to read more about REvil, how it operated, you could probably search it online and learn. But that was designed with the modern tactics and techniques. Now, what I'm coming to say here is that with all these focus on tactics and techniques and things like that, do you guys you probably correlate with few tools that's shown on the screen, or identify some of the tools, probably some tools you might already know or already be using in your organization, some of the business tools, right? And 7-zips and things like that, legitimate softwares that you use it for your day in and day out activities. But the problem with that is what we see here is 90% of the attacks were because of these common tools, exploited common tools that's part of your organization. You could probably see those as a free software for simple tasks. But this is what I was talking about, living off the land, right? Using the tools that's part of your system, using the administrative credentials that's available at your system, and then using it to infiltrate your organization, lateral movements. So if you can identify some of those tools that's part of your organization, then I think it's time for you to have a proper strategy in order to avoid these things, how to avoid escalation, privilege escalations, and how to avoid these threats to come into or ransomwares to come into your organization. So if I concentrate on this 90% of the problem, then I think I have better edge in reducing the surface attack. The previous gentleman, I was listening to his conversation, and he was talking about let's see what we first have to do. Let's come to the basics. Let's try to fix the basics, and then from there on build and go on to the further. That's exactly what is needed. You have to probably come down to the basics and build from there step by step and move towards a comprehensive cybersecurity regime. And for that, then I have plotted it's a Johari window, but this tells us, this window probably gives you a better idea about how to put your simple measures, simple techniques, or simple endpoint security measures. Things like you can see on the window, you have knowns and unknowns quadrants here and there. So at your first quadrant, you have a known and known, where you will have the patching or the known vulnerabilities. You know the vulnerability, you know what is the fix available, not necessarily patching alone. So you have a fix, you have a vulnerability, you go ahead and fix them up, that known knowns. And you have a configuration, you have to put this policy, go ahead and fix them up. That's known quadrant. Then you move to the known unknown. So there are probability of data leaks. There could be when user uses a USBs, or probably email attachments and things like that. Or if a user is going to use application, right, when they are using applications, if they have administrative privileges, they will be able to, the unknown, the result will be unknown, or the impact will be unknown, but there is a spot there. You go ahead and fix those. You make sure your applications are controlled. You have a common inventory of what you need and what you don't need. Then you have to fix that, and you come down to the known known part, where inside a threat you would never know what could be the cost, but the impact, what it will be there. So you go to that quadrant and you fix those insider attacks, and you try to understand what's there on the blind spot. And finally, you have no control area, the final quadrant, unknown, where that's where you employ tools like EDR, risk framework, and you come into a compliance, right? So that's where even on the previous sessions, they were talking about this EDR, how endpoint detection response could be employed. So that finally you come to that quadrant and employ effective tools in order to, mitigate the issues, or mitigate the ransomwares or the zero-day attacks that's happening. So these are the 4 quadrants that you can keep, and probably design strategies specific to those quadrants. Now, how is CIS going to help you in order to do that? These 4 quadrants can be done in a very, very simple CIS tool. So the top 10, I'm going to put the top 10 security controls over here. You could see CIS talks about the controlled effect enterprise assets. You need to have an inventory of the enterprise assets and the softwares. I'm going to combine those two there. So, and then secure configurations. for the enterprise assets and software, how you're going to, for example, what's your policies and how your the zero trusts is also coming into those configurations, secure configuration of how the user data is going to be accessed, how the corporate data is going to be accessed. You need to have secure configurations for them. Continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation is required. So we need to have a remediation tool, not just assessment, but you need to remediate those vulnerabilities that comes in. Data protection, you should be able to distribute the content securely, and also in case of theft you need to maintain resilience, so you need a data protection program there. Access control management, one of the key important things: who has access, which application has access, what users have access. In fact, that account management and access control management are two different important things that has to be implemented. Browser protection, I was talking about more mobile based or browser based attacks that's coming up. You need to make sure you fix or you define a policy for your browser. Yes, policies, things like what plugins are allowed, what permissions are allowed, what he can upload, when they have to use data in persistent sessions, when they have to use the data sessions, and you have to define a policy for browser controls. So, and then malware defenses, of course, you need a strong EDR and anti-ransomware tool that could not necessarily, not just preventing the ransomware, but you should also have an effective backup where it could bring back your business data as well. And finally, the most important thing is the audit logs. You have to make sure you have a strong SIEM tool, and you should have an audit log always, right? So again, this was again most people talk about on the cybersecurity on the same side, implementing a SIEM tool, implementing a vulnerability tool. So I was just giving you how you can design your strategy. Everybody talks about the same thing, but I have to take about a specific compliance. I'll have to take about specific controls and make sure I go with that compliance. So this is something that you could implement immediately at the organization level, and make sure you go ahead and you go ahead and use that. Then if I have to sum it up against an endpoint, right? Endpoint, it's called the endpoints lockdown, right? I have put all these things around how you lock yourself from the COVID-19. I've just put all these measures around an endpoint. So patch management, vulnerability assessment, network access control, conditional access, browser security, antivirus, EDR, and endpoint privilege access management, encryption. That's one of the areas where you have to look at. So if you can put all these things in around an endpoint, I think you'll have a better edge in reducing the attack surface, right? And one of the other important things apart from these endpoint lockdown is your zero trust network access policy, right? So when I say zero trust network access policies, it's not just you give access to a specific application and you stop it there. No, I'm talking more about it's been adopted as a philosophy. When I say philosophy, what do I mean is that first thing, some of the policy level, I'm just moving to the policy levels. First, I talked about CIS, what is the problem, and then how CIS controls you can adapt into it. And then how zero trust access could be at a philosophy level, how you can implement it at your network level. First thing is try keeping your users off your corporate networks while you still provide access to them. So you will never allow them into a corporate network, but you'll still allow them to whatever they require alone. And then enforcing single sign-on for all corporate applications, be it on-prem, be it SaaS application, be it in fact infrastructure as well. Make sure you implement single sign-on on all corporate applications. Then you need, if you are going to go for BIOI or bring your own internet kind of approach, then make sure your applications are hidden unless it is verified. That's one of the philosophy of zero trust. You verify, then you allow access, right? You allow those devices. So you keep your application hidden if it's especially if those requests are going to come from bring your own internet. What I mean is work from anywhere, roaming users, mobile phones, wherever they're coming it from. You make sure they are hidden until you go for a verification of zero trust. multi-factor authentication that's been talked everywhere, MFAs, multi-factor authentication. And I'm going one step further, not just multi-factor authentication on accessing the applications, but I'm saying multi-factor authentication at every level, design level, wherever you have, for example, remote capabilities, remote management level. Enforce multi-factor authentication at every query that you execute, every remote management that you do. If you're able to enforce multi-factor authentication at every level, even when they use tactics and techniques, I think you'll have better edge of reducing the attack surface. That's multi-factor authentication. Then EDR and SIEM tools that we spoke about, this is part of CIS as well, and that's part of zero trust philosophy as well. Endpoint detection and response, strong SIEM solution that would give you a complete and comprehensive full reporting for you to understand and take necessary action. And finally, encryption, right? And make sure you have encryption at all your endpoints, be it mobile devices or be it your laptops, desktops, doesn't matter. Enforce encryption at all levels, right? That's going to be your zero trust model. In fact, if you have these, if you are able to have these inducted into your organization at the moment, I think you'll have a better edge, and that's what I would probably, from ManageEngine side, we call it as endpoint management and security. If you could adapt all these 10 different security controls plus the zero trust philosophy, I think that is the unified endpoint management and security from ManageEngine side. That's what we have defined. Our products are also aligned along with that. I've just probably quoted some of the different terminologies here that could be part of your top 10 CIS control that would cater the requirements for a CIS control: vulnerability management, EDR tool, and application control, privilege management, baselining of application, data leak prevention solution, browser security, encryption for modern devices, and zero trust philosophy. While I say these 10 things would help you reduce the attack surface, this is the different product lines that we have from ManageEngine as part of unified endpoint management and security solution. So there are different line of products as part of endpoint security and as part of endpoint management as well. I've just tried to put those things in a small nutshell. So in case you require assistance, you could probably reach out to ManageEngine for us, and we could be able to help you out on those solutions as well. We have mobile device management, OS imaging, patching, vulnerability management, and browser security. We have application control, data leak prevention as well, DLP solution, anti-ransomware solution as well. So if you would like to have everything unified in one suite that could do, manage your endpoints, you can definitely reach out to us. With a final note, I'm going to finish off. This is from note from Tony Sega, a chief evangelist. I liked it because he this is what he says. He says the rapid shift of cybersecurity from a focus on technology, what technology you have, to an emphatic assertion. That's what we needed we need as well. We have to focus on technology, from a technology and from an emphatic assertion. Well, we'll have to make sure we tie up with the right people and we tie up with right tools and make sure these cyber attacks are reduced. So I like the statements very much. A rapid shift of a cybersecurity from a focus on technology and an emphatic assertion, moving towards partnership with the organizations, partnership with the AI, partnership with the tools that could reduce your surface attack. And you should rethink about how you can go with the cyber insurance or cyber security and things like that, right? With that, I'm going to finish. Thank you very much for patiently listening to us. And in case you need any help, please make sure to visit our board. Over to you, Anisha.